going to be reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 6, Text 19 through 30. Again, this is January 9th, 2025, with the VIHE Bhakti Vedanta course. Nayatu cham prinayato ba yayush ba vayasho saratmajaha atmatvat sarvabhutanam siddhatvat ihasarvata. My dear sons of demons, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana is the original Supersoul, the father of all living entities. Consequently, there are no impediments to pleasing him or worshiping him under any conditions, whether one be a child or an old man. The relationship between the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always a fact, and therefore there is no difficulty in pleasing the Lord. Parvareshu bhuteshu brahmantastavardishu bhotikeshu vikareshu bhuteshvyata mahatsucha guneshu guna samyecha guna vyati kare tata eka evo paroyatma bhagavan ishvaro vyaha pratyag atma swarupena drishya rupena cha swayam vyapta vyapaka nirdesho yan irdesho vikalpita kevalananubhavanda swarupa parameshwara mayayantar hitaishvarya iyate gunasargaya. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Controller, who is infallible and indefatigable, is present in different forms of life, from the inert living beings, stavara, such as the plants, to Brahma, the foremost created living being. He is also present in the varieties of material creations and in the material elements, the total material energy and the modes of material nature, sattvagun, rajagun, and tamagun, as well as the unmanifested material nature and the false ego. Although he is one, he is present everywhere, and he is also the transcendental supersoul, the cause of all causes, who is present as the observer in the cores of the hearts of all living entities. He is indicated as that which is pervaded and as the all-pervading supersoul, but actually he cannot be indicated. He is changeless and undivided. He is simply perceived as a supreme Satchidananda, eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Being covered by the curtain of the external energy, to the atheist he appears non-existent. Tasmat sarveshu bhuteshu dayam kuruta soridam bhavam asuram unmuchya yayatus yat yathokshajaha. Therefore, my dear young friends born of demons, please act in such a way that the Supreme Lord, who is beyond the conception of material knowledge, will be satisfied. Give up your demoniac nature and act without enmity or duality. Show mercy to all living entities by enlightening them in devotional service, thus becoming their well-wishers. Tuste cha tatra kim ablabhya ananta ajye kim tirguna vyatikarad ihaye swasiddhaha dharma ajaya kim agunena cha kansitena saram justam charanayor upagayatam naha. Nothing is unobtainable for devotees who have satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the cause of all causes, the original source of everything. The Lord is the reservoir of unlimited spiritual qualities. For devotees, therefore, who are transcendental to the modes of material nature, what is the use of following the principles of religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, which are all automatically obtainable under the influence of the modes of nature? We devotees always glorify the lotus feet of the Lord, and therefore we need not ask for anything in terms of dharma, kama, artha, and moksha. Dharmartha kama iti yo bihitastri varga iksha trayadnaya damatu vividyacha varta manye tad etad akilam nigamasya satyam swatatma swatarpanam swa surida paramashvaya pumsaha. Religion, economic, and sense gratification. These are described in the Vedas as Trivarga, or three ways to salvation. Within these three categories are education and self-realization, ritualistic ceremonies performed according to Vedic injunction, logic, the science of law and order, and the various means of earning one's livelihood. These are the external subject matters of study in the Vedas, and therefore I consider them material. However, I consider surrender to the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu to be transcendental. Dhyanam tad etad amalam duravapamaha narayano narasaka kila naradaya ekatinam bhagavatastad akinchananam padaravinda rajasa pluta dehinam syat. Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the well-wisher and friend of all living entities, formally explained this transcendental knowledge to the great sage Narada. Such knowledge is extremely difficult to understand without the mercy of a saintly person like Narada, but everyone who is taking shelter of Narada's disciplic succession can understand this confidential knowledge. Shrutam etam maya purvam jnanam vijnanam samyutam dharmam bhagavatam shuram narada deva darshanat. Prahlad Maharaj continued, I received this knowledge from the great saint Narada Muni, who is always engaged in devotional service. This knowledge, which is called Bhagavad Dharma, is fully scientific. It is based on logic and philosophy and is free from all material contamination. Sri Daitya Putra Uchu Parada Tvam Vayam Chapi Narte Nyam Vidmahe Guru Etabhyam Guru Putrabhyam Balanam Api Hishvaro Balas Yanta Purastaya Mahatsango Duranvaya Chindina Samshayam Shomya Shakchets Vishrambhav Karanam. The sons of the demons replied, Dear Prahlada, neither you nor we know any teacher or spiritual master under than Shanda and Amarka, the sons of Sukracharya. After all, we are children, and they are controllers. For you especially, who always remain within the palace, it is very difficult to associate with a great personality. Dear friend, most gentle one, would you kindly explain how it was possible for you to hear Narada? Kindly dispel our doubts in this regard. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 7th canto, 6th chapter of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled Prahlad Instructs His Demoniac Schoolmates. I wanted to just briefly go back to something we talked about yesterday because I didn't have the quote handy. And it was this question about liberating one's family members if they're attached to us. So this is later on in the same pastime. This is 7:10:18. And here is where Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Prahlada, O most pure, O great saintly person, your father has been purified along with 21 forefathers in your family. Because you were born in this family, the entire dynasty has been purified. Prabhupada's purport. The word Tri Saptabhi means 7 multiplied by 3. In one's family, one can count back 4 or 5 generations to one's great-grandfather or even one's great-grandfather's father. But since the Lord mentions 21 forefathers, this indicates that the benediction expands to other families also. Before the present family in which one has taken birth, one must have been born in other families. Thus, when a Vaishnava takes birth in a family, by the grace of the Lord, he purifies not only that family, but also the families of his previous births. So this is connected. If you take the other instructions of the Shastra, the other examples of the Shastra, one understands that this refers to attachment. So it's not just technically that you're, in the same family as a devotee, because he's saying, you may know your great-grandfather, even your great-great-grandfather you might know. Most people don't know more than their great-grandparents. Most people do not know their great-great-grandparents. And people know their grandchildren, depending on how long you live, when you had your children, and so many factors. So you may have a relationship with your grandchildren and great-grandchildren. It's rare with great-great. And although I have a god sister who has great-greats. So because you're only going to know those generations in this birth, this liberation of the devotee's family applies to people who knew you, your family members who were attached to you in other births. So that's that. Yes, just wanted to go over that from yesterday. Okay. So the summary of this section. In everything, and he's pleased with our efforts. That it's much easier to please Narayana than to please persons in this world. That pleasing him will satisfy all our desires, so we don't need to work for anything else separately. This is the truth taught by Narayana to Narada. So some of the questions that we might have that can be answered in this section is, it seems difficult to find Narayana. Where are we going to find him? Where is God? And it may seem difficult to please him. And our other question that we might have is, how do we know this is true? Anybody can say anything. How do we know it's true? So the themes of this section is that it's easy and natural to please the Lord, that Narayan is the pervading and the pervaded, and is therefore accessible always to everyone, that pleasing the Lord includes having mercy and friendship with all living beings, and that we can learn from the Lord and his devotees in humility. So those are the themes of this section. Okay, we're going to look first at 19 through 26, which is instruction on worshiping the Lord. And verses 19 through 24 is about pleasing the all-pervading Supreme Lord is not difficult, and one has to be merciful to all. So Prabhupada writes in the purport to text 19, pleasing one's society, family, community, and nation is extremely difficult. Pleasing Narayana, however, is not at all difficult. It is very easy. Now, I would assume that all of us are old enough to know the truth of this statement, that it's extremely difficult to please society, family, community, and nation. The example Prabhupada gives often is that of Gandhi, who sacrificed everything for India, and yet it was an Indian citizen who killed him. So at least one person in India was not satisfied. I mean, was so not satisfied that he killed him. That's really not being satisfied. So maybe maybe Gandhi could satisfy many Indians, but there was at least one he couldn't satisfy. At least one person hated him enough to kill him. And I give these examples all the time. A wife's trying to please her husband. And so when he comes home, she says, oh, I've made lasagna. Your favorite food. Oh, I'm so happy you've made lasagna. And the next day when he comes home again, she's made lasagna. And this time he says, oh, you're making it 2 days in a row? What will please somebody on Monday may displease them on Tuesday. What may please them at 10 in the morning may displease them at 11 in the morning. It's the way it works. Pleasing another jiva separately from Krishna is extremely difficult. The people who we're closest to, who we care about the most, are also people who get irritated with us. We can try to be the perfect child, but our parents are sometimes going to be irritated with us. We can try to be the perfect parent, and our children will sometimes be irritated with us. Even sometimes parents reject children completely, or children reject parents completely, often over what appears to somebody outside the family as something minor. Nowadays, people get divorced over what, again, appears to be people outside the family as minor. I'm divorcing you because you don't talk to me enough, or something like that. I mean, it's extremely hard. And the larger the group of people involved, the harder it becomes. If you say, well, I'm going to I'm going to work for ISKCON and please ISKCON. You know, there's hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of people who identify as members of ISKCON. And I will absolutely give you an ironclad promise that you will not be able to act in such a way as to please all of them. I mean, there are people in the Hare Krishna movement who don't like me at all. And there are people who like me. And then there are people who don't know that I exist. And then there are people who are somewhere in between. And if you try to please your country, I'm not going to be able to act in such a way that every American citizen is going to be pleased with me. It's just not going to happen. You know, whatever you do, you could sacrifice everything, right? Think about our modern politicians. You know, they all have people who love them and people who hate them and people who are in between. And even if some of them, I'm sure some of them, have a genuine heart for their country, and I'm sure some of them, and really, really care and have really given their heart and soul and their money and their time to their country, and they still have people who hate them. And they have people who consider they're the enemy of the country. You can't do it. It's very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult. You can please another jiva sometimes for some time, but you cannot be consistently pleasing another jiva. It's just not gonna happen. And we really should give up trying to do this. This tendency to want to be loved. I remember I went to a class of Hridayanandamaharaj many years ago, it was decades and decades ago, about Narada Muni in his previous life as a Gandharva, and how when the demigods were gathering to glorify the Lord, he was singing praises of the demigods, which Prabhupada identifies as like cinema songs. And the demigods cursed him to go down into earth and become a Shudra. But it was saying that in that life, he was very much loved by the demigods. And Hridayananda Maharaj was talking about this urge of ours to want to be accepted by some group, to want to be loved by someone, to want to be part of this is biological, that the human species is a social creature, and that our ability to eat and our ability to defend ourselves and get shelter is very much dependent on our herd, so to speak, HERD. So some of it is biological, but some of it is also ultimately spiritual, because we are all part of Krishna and Krishna's associates. So we're trying so hard. But please, my dear friends, let us give up the endeavor to try to please jivas separately from Krishna. It will never work. We will become very frustrated. We will become very frustrated with them. The majority of the arguments that happen between family and friends are because we tried to please somebody and they weren't pleased. That's the vast majority of the arguments are in that category. Or we think the other person wasn't trying to please us. And then Prabhupada says, pleasing Narayana, however, is not at all difficult. It is very easy. What a relief that should be. He says, our relationship with Narayana is natural and always existing. This is very important. There are people, even in our Gaudiya Sampradaya, who are making propaganda that our relationship with Narayan has to be established by a guru or by some devotee. But no, it's always existing. And then that pleasing Narayana can be done in any time, place, or circumstance. And this kind of a statement, if you think about hermeneutics, is a restatement of Siddhanta. This is a restatement of the Chatur Sloki of the Bhagavatam, the last Chatur Sloki, 2.9.36, that this knowledge is available at any time, in any place, and to anyone under any situation. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what family you're from. It doesn't matter what your situation is. It doesn't matter in what species of life you are, that everybody can please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says something interesting, which harkens back to what we brought out and talking about the 9 processes of devotional service. He says one can please the Lord by any of the 9 processes, so any one of them, or just by the desire to please him. Now, this kind of reflects back to what Srila Prabhupada said about dasya, that if you just have this mood of dasya, even if you're not actually doing anything, that alone pleases the Lord. Okay, 20 to 23. It's easy to realize and please the Lord because he's present in everyone's heart, in every atom, and is everywhere. So it's not like, if I want to please, say if I want to please my daughter right now, actually she just finished dressing the deity. She's offering the artik at the deity greeting artik at the temple. If I wanted to please her right now, I would need to be there. Instead of sitting here in my room, I'd need to be at the temple, and I'd need to be looking at Radhagolokananda, and I would need to say something like, oh, just the fact that I'm there looking at the deities on the days that she dressed would please her very much. And if I said, oh, I really like the way you put flowers on Golokananda's belt or in Radharani's hair, that would please her. But I can't. I'm here. I'm in my room. I can't be in my room. Someone needs to mute. I can't be in my room and at the same time seeing the so I can't please her right now. I just can't. She's not here. I'm not there. Right? I just can't do it. I can't please my parents anymore. They're in another body somewhere. They have most likely completely forgotten that they were my parents in this birth. They most likely have no awareness of my existence and no continued feeling of attachment to me, most likely. So I can't please them anymore. I can act in a way that I think they might be pleased if they were still alive, but that's a different thing. I actually can't please them. I don't even know who and where they are. But Narayana is everywhere. He's always with me. I don't have to go to a temple to please him. I don't have to go anywhere. He's always there. He's always there in my heart. It's right there. Actually, when Lord Chaitanya was told that Krishna was his heart, he started tearing his chest apart. My mother said she was all upset, and then Gadadhar Pandit says, no, don't worry, Krishna's coming, Krishna's coming. So one needs the association of devotees to realize the presence of the Lord. It's most people are kind of going around their lives. They don't know that Krishna's there. So we need some mercy from the devotees. In verse 24, how do we want to act to satisfy the Lord? Okay, so we establish that the Lord is available always, everywhere, at all times. We establish that, including in our heart. So he's always available. Okay, and then how? How? People ask all the time. It's one of the top questions that I hear all over the world for years and years and years and years and years. How do I know whether or not I'm satisfying Krishna? How do I know whether or not what I'm doing is satisfying to Krishna? So there's a number of places where the answer is given. But here in 24 is to act to satisfy the Lord, act without enmity or duality. No enmity towards anyone and not a sense of duality, not a sense of separateness. I am a servant of the Lord and I have service. In any situation I'm in, I have some service to do and I am a servant. And second of all, showing mercy to all living entities. My dear friends, it is impossible to satisfy the Lord and have hatred to any of his parts and parcels. Can't do it. Just can't do it. Won't work. It won't work. These people who are propagating some so-called system of religion by hating other people and trying to kill other people, it's not going to work. Now, of course, sometimes if you're a soldier, you may have to establish righteousness. I was just hearing Prabhupada say this morning in a class in Mauritius that the devotee was asking about Yadahi dahi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata bhutanam dharmasya tadatmanam shrajamyaham. He was saying there's so much injustice. Why doesn't Krishna come to take care of it? Prabhupada said Krishna is here. You just don't see him. And then Prabhupada also said that Krishna doesn't tell Arjuna, you sleep on the chariot and I'll fight for justice. But he tells Arjuna, you have to fight for justice. So fighting for justice is all right, but without enmity, without hatred, with mercy, with compassion. Prabhupada also talks about the best way to satisfy the Lord is by preaching, to become a guru devotee. We're all meant to become gurus in some capacity. What we've been given, we should share. There's this basic principle that whatever we've been given, we should share. If we're given money, we should share money. If we're given knowledge, we should share knowledge. Whatever we're given, we should share. Whatever we're given, we should share. And this is another way to satisfy the Lord. And especially, we should share transcendent knowledge. That's the most valuable thing to share. Yes, we should share our money, we should share our time, we should share our knowledge, we should share our expertise. That's all good. We should have a mood of sharing, but we should also share what is most valuable, what will be the most helpful to people. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments on text 24, because, quote, because all beings are the Shakti of the Lord, they are forms of the Lord. And my Lord also exists in his Swarup within all these beings. Therefore, I should show affection to them. Very profound. They are forms of the Lord. We are all jivas, are vibhinansa, expansions of the Lord, simultaneously one and different with the Lord. So this is not, we should not get into some Mayavadi conception that Narayan's become a poor man, the Daridra Narayan nonsense that Prabhupada talks about. At the same time, there is a oneness. We are Vibhinansa, expansions of the Lord. Everyone is an expansion of the Lord. Everyone is, in one sense, a form of the Lord. You know, our children are expansions of ourself, but they're more different than the same. And in our case, we are both simultaneously different and the same, plus the Lord is within them. This is what when we put on our tilak, we're establishing the temples of the different forms of the Lord. Here's the temple of Narayana, here's the temple of Madhava, here's the temple of Govinda. We recognize that the Lord is already there, and so it's like if you have a building with the deity of the Lord, then you recognize, you put out a sign, this is a temple. So we should show affection to everyone. That doesn't mean that we should go around hugging tigers. It doesn't mean that we should, invite criminals to live in our home. It doesn't mean that. Again, we need to establish justice in the world. That's also the desire of the Lord to do that, whether we do that directly or whether because that's our job, or whether we inform the people who are meant to do that and they do that because it's not our job. But we do that still with showing affection and respect to everyone. Okay, so Prahlad Maharaj has established that Vishnu is easily accessible and how to please him. Now, why should we do that? So 25 to 26, he's talking about how nothing is unobtainable when Vishnu is satisfied. Therefore, we should surrender unto him. In 25, he says that everything else is included in bhakti. So one doesn't need to work separately for dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. And of course, Prahlad Maharaj is specifically saying this because the teachers were always talking about this. The children might reasonably ask, well, okay, we can surrender to Narayan, but shouldn't we also do these other things? And Prahlad says, you don't have to do them separately. You don't have to say, well, I'll get my spiritual satisfaction from worshiping Vishnu, and I'll get my other satisfactions in other ways. That's a very Kanista Adhikari mentality according to the definition of Kanista, Majjhima, and Uttama from the 11th canto, where the Kanista means not steady. Another big question people always ask is, how can I become steady in my bhakti? Kanishta, one is not steady. So one type of kanishta is where we see, well, here's God and here's the rest of my life. God's in the temple. And most religious people are like this. This is the God time and the God place. This is where I go to worship God at this time, or maybe they have a place in their house, they have a puja room, or they have an altar, they have a prayer time, if you think about any deeply religious people in any religion. So they have some prayer time, they have some prayer space. What to speak of people who aren't deeply religious. And then it's a tendency, well, here's God, and here's my family, and here's my work, and here's like a different preps. This is my sweet stuff. This is my salty stuff. And the really deep down Kanista Adhikaris think God is only in my place of worship, and you have sectarianism. But that's a different matter to what we're discussing right now. So the point is that they're thinking, a Kanista is thinking, yes, I worship God, but I can do other things also. I mean, the materialists think worshiping God is, as we talked about in previous classes, insubstantial and irrelevant. It's not going to get me anything. Then religious people think, well, I need to worship God, but I need to also do other things separately. And Prahlad Maharaj is saying, no, you don't. Everything's included in bhakti. Everything's included in bhakti. Whatever you want, you will get through bhakti. And a person who has bhakti is fully satisfied and therefore doesn't desire dharma, artha, or moksha, or kama. That it's just, they don't need it. They already have it. Kind of like, we talked about money, and everybody wants money. But why do we want money? We want money for what it gives us. Just having money in and of itself, like, why would we care about a bunch of paper, or even if we had a bunch of gold? I mean, we're concerned with it because what does it give us? It gives us a sense of security. Just even having the money around, oh, I can look at all this money. Well, I'm secure if something happens. Then I have this money to save me. Even money is called securities, which is interesting. When people invest in money, it's called securities. We want money for status, for prestige. So we can have, a nice house and a nice car and nice clothing and so many things so that we can impress others. And wanting to have prestige is not merely prideful. It's also related to survival, to biological survival. As I said, we're herd animals. And so if we have a higher status in our social group, then we're going to have more access to food and shelter. We're going to be more likely to be protected by the group and so forth. So our urge for status is partially pride, and it's partially just a biological survival instinct. So we want money for status. We want money for pleasures, right? If I have more money, I can buy softer clothes. I can buy warmer clothes. I can buy better food, more comfortable, attractive furniture and so forth. I can get pleasures. We want money for freedom. If I have a lot of money, then maybe I don't need to work. I can go where I want and do what I want. I can be free. I'm sure there's other reasons we want money, but those are the main ones that comes to mind, or security, status, which relates to security, and pleasures and freedom. But suppose you had all that without money. Suppose you had all that. Suppose you had full security. You knew you were going to be taken care of, and you already had high status and respect, and you had all the pleasures you could possibly want. Yes, and you had all the freedom that you wanted, even though you had no money. Let's say you were in a situation like that. Would you want money? No, you wouldn't care. You wouldn't care. So all the things that we want through dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, if we have them through bhakti, then we don't want dharma, artha, kama, moksha. We don't need them. We already have what those things would give us. In fact, we already have them in their perfect original form. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, commenting on text 25, says, quote, we glorified profusely upagayatam, will serve jushtam, the sweetness of the Lord's lotus feet. The Lord's feet are like lotuses with sweet fragrance and taste, sadam. The devotees are like bees who by their nature do not desire other things. So such a beautiful, beautiful meditation on the Lord's form. Verse 26, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, to act on the material platform, even if one's activities are sanctioned by the Vedas, is not the ultimate goal of life. The ultimate goal of life is to stay on the spiritual platform, fully surrendered to the Parama Purusha, the Supreme Person. So, generally speaking, religions in the world today, including Hinduism, are teaching that be a good person according to the scriptures. Follow the rules of the scriptures, be a good moral, ethical person, and that's the goal of life. I remember talking to someone who was brought up in the Hare Krishna movement, but who was no longer practicing. And I asked this person, well, do you have any spirituality? And the person said, oh, yes, I do. And like 1 or 2 days later, I said, so what is it? What is your spirituality? And the person replied, just to be a good person. Of course, that begs the question of who defines good. The definition of good person is constantly changing according to different cultural viewpoints. But if we're going to say a good person according to the Vedas, according to the scriptures, but still that's not sufficient. It still keeps us in our material identification. Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says in his commentary, text 26, that the boys may wonder why their teachers focused on Dharma, Kama, Artha, and Moksha. And Prahlad Maharaj would reply that he's not condemning these, that they are suitable for some persons. So there are people who are not going to take up bhakti directly. They're just not. We might think they should or they could, but they're just not going to. And so for such people, it's better to engage them in Dharma, Artha, and Kama, and Moksha. That eventually, if they do that, following the scriptures, in order to follow the scriptures, they're going to need some association with somebody who can explain the scriptures. In the scriptures, they're going to associate with saintly persons. So if they're following Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha from the scriptures, it will eventually bring them to bhakti. So then one may ask, well, how do we know that this is true? How do we know that this is true? How can we trust this? This is a very good question. Where are you getting this from? It's a very good question. It's a question that none of us should ever feel shy about asking. We can ask it respectfully. I was in India, I was in Vrindavan, and there was a devotee speaking about some of Krishna's Vrindavan Leelas and told a story, a Leela, that I had never heard before. And it was wonderful. I was like, wow, what a wonderful story. So afterwards, I asked this devotee, where is this from? And his initial reaction was definitely not favorable. His initial reaction definitely communicated that, why are you challenging the veracity of what I said? And I immediately said, I don't, because he said, well, I don't have the source handy. And I said, well, I'm not challenging you. I believe you, but I found this story very fascinating, very attractive, and I would like to read more about it. And then he wasn't offended anymore. And then he said, well, I heard it from so-and-so. I'm going to see him again in 2 months. I'll ask him, remind me. So I reminded him, when you see so-and-so, can you ask him? And I did not get any response. And then I asked again about a week or so later. I said, did you ask so-and-so about this Leela? And did they say where it came from? No response. So I will never repeat that story to anybody ever under any situation, because I don't accept that it's bona fide. So if somebody says something, they should be able to provide a source. So the boys are wondering, like, they don't even ask. Prahlad Maharaj volunteers in 27 to 30. In 27, he says, Narayana gave this knowledge to Narada. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, to give the boys faith, Prahlad explains the Guru Sampradaya. Quote, if Narada is the hearer, what hopes do low persons like us have to understand this, unquote. And all those who bathe in the dust of the Lord's lotus feet, who are dedicated devotees, can understand this, not just the most exalted devotees. So first he explains that this is in Parampara. Then in 28, he directly says, I got this knowledge from Narada. And in 29 to 30, the children ask, how did you learn this from Narada? You're protected in the palace, just like us. You can't get out. We're all little kids. We can't get out of the palace. Which indicates, by the way, in this Gurukula that it was like, we heard it was next to the palace. It sounds like the children were not living in that school. It sounds like they were still living with their parents, and it sounds like it was a day school. They said, we're protected in the palace, and you have other teachers. You have Shandanamarka. You don't have Narada as your teachers. Okay, some interesting points from here is verses 20 to 23. So one possible translation of this verse is he is described as the pervader in the form of Paramatma and is known as the pervaded in the form of the universe. So the Lord is described as he who pervades everything and he who is pervaded by everything. So Paramatma pervades everything. He is the soul of the universe, and just like we, the soul, pervade this body. I know what's going on with my right foot, which is now starting to fall asleep because of the way I'm sitting. So I'm pervading, although I'm in the heart, here I am dealing with my right foot because my consciousness pervades. So the Lord, as the super soul, as Ksir Vishnu, is pervading the universe. But the body of the universe is also him. The form of the universe is the Lord's body, and all living entities and all objects are within his body. So in that sense, he is also pervaded. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary to text 20 to 23, he says, what is Maya? Maya creates sargaya, sense objects, guna, like sound, which are realized by the senses. Thus, sound and other sense objects are perceived, but not the Lord, since the jiva's vision for seeing the Lord is concealed by avidya, a transformation of Maya. And he quotes Bhagavad Gita 7:14, Davyesha gunamayi mama maya durachya mam evaye prapajante mayam etam tarantite. My Maya is made of the gunas, fit for jiva's pleasure, is hard to surpass, but those who surrender to me alone can cross over Maya. Thus, when Maya is overcome by bhakti to the Lord becomes visible according to the degree of bhakti. So this is an objection that could be raised, that the Lord is the pervader and is pervaded, and yet we don't perceive him. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, when we have bhakti, then to whatever degree we have bhakti, we will be able to perceive him. Okay, so our questions, again, of this section is, it seems difficult to find Narayan or to please him, and how do we know this is all true? And the answers that are given here is that pleasing Narayan is easy and natural and can be done by anyone, anytime, anywhere. In order to please Narayan, one has to be merciful to all living beings, and that this knowledge comes from Narayan himself, that the Lord he himself is very merciful, and he is giving us this knowledge through the disciplic succession of how he can be found and how he can be pleased. Okay, time for our break. I think you all know by now when we will come back together again, and then I'm going to exhort you again. Take a break. Take your eyes away from screens. Take your body out of your chair. Hare Krishna. Okay. Going on with verses 19 through 30. So Why are there no difficulties? According to verse 19, according to Prahlad Maharaj, why are there no difficulties? As Prabhupada would say, what is the difficulty? Why are there no difficulties? I would like everyone to answer this question based on text 19, to write in the chat. Look at text 19. If you need me to share, I can do that. So according to this verse, text 19 and purport, why are there no difficulties? Please write an answer in the chat. You can also look through the purport. So Ajay, you didn't really say why. You just simply repeated it. You just repeated the question. Question is, why is there no difficulty? So Ajay Prabhu, if you just say, there's no difficulty, that doesn't answer it. It's what we call circular reasoning. If you just say, it is because it is, that doesn't answer the question.
I see, okay.
Okay. Prima Manjari, I really like your answer. Because he's the closest to us. We already have a natural relationship with him. Ashri Radha Govinda, I do not understand what you wrote. Maybe you could clarify it. I don't understand it. Bhagavad Gita Center, I don't remember seeing you here before. I don't know who you are. But whoever you are, I assume that you're not a center. I assume that you're a person. Anyway, I like your answer, whoever you are. Yes. Now I got to know that DS means devotional service. Okay. Okay, Nilamani, also you didn't answer the question. You restated it. Why is it not difficult? Because it's easy. That doesn't answer the question. It's like if a parent says to you, go do this, and you say, why? Because you should go do it. That's a logical fallacy called a tautology or a circular reasoning. It's right because it's right. It doesn't answer it. So Nilamani, you still need to actually answer the question. Very nice, Ekanta. Oh, okay. Okay, Sri Radha Govinda. So you're saying something a little deep there. Nice. Bhagavad Gita Center, who are you? Can you change your name to who you actually are? I don't think you're a center.
Sorry, it's me. Sorry.
Okay, we'll change it to your name. Who are your students today? Well, the center. Oh, Prasant Modani, I really liked your answer. It's so sweet. My 3-year-old son has to do very little to please me, as I do love him unconditionally. Similarly, because we are all children of Narayana Krishna, he is always loving us and predisposed to be pleased by us. Yes, that's so insightful. He's predisposed to be pleased by us. He already is pleased by us. He's pleased by us just because we're part of him. And so we don't have to do much to please him. It's an ever-existing relationship. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, be careful of, it's nice to actually study logic. Of course, there's a downside to studying logic. The downside to studying logic is that most people at the present time don't study logic. And so you may get very frustrated with the illogic of most people. But it's good to study logic because otherwise you may use logical fallacies without realizing it. If someone says, why is it not difficult to please the Lord? And you say, because it's easy to please the Lord, that is a logical fallacy called a tautology. Okay, so if it's so much easier to please the Lord than one's family, etc., nation, everybody, why does it sometimes seem difficult? Anybody have any thoughts on this? You can raise your hand or write in the chat. Anybody who'd like to say, why does it sometimes seem difficult? Yes, do we all agree that sometimes it seems difficult? Everybody agrees? So if it's not difficult, why does it sometimes seem difficult? Mahalakshmi, yes.
Because I forget him, because I don't think about him. I don't have his presence within me. get outside conscious.
Okay. Somebody wrote me a private message instead of to the group. Maybe because our default attitude is to please ourselves first. Yeah. We're like a car that has its steering wheel skewed because we don't want him 100%. Because we're not fully committed. Any other thoughts? Anybody who wants to raise their hand? Oh, you want to blame it? Okay, God's will is simple but not easy. Yeah, but here it actually we're saying that it is easy. It seems difficult to please the Lord because we are used to immediate results, and the Lord's ways are mysterious and takes time. Therefore, when he doesn't give us what we ask for, but something even better, it takes time to understand that. I like that. I like that. It's a different way of thinking, and so it seems difficult. Like if I want to please myself directly, like Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur said, right in the verses we were looking at yesterday, I just want to know if I have enough cakes and sweets. So that's easy. I just had to tell the cook that I liked Shrikant, and so today she gave me butterscotch Shrikant. That was very simple. But if I want to please Krishna, it may not be that obvious. It may take some time. Yes, Ajay Prabhu.
Mataji, like if I want to please you or anybody here,
Yes.
I talk to you, I actually, make you comfortable, offer you, whatever you like. And then I immediately get a reaction, that you're feeling pleased with whatever I've done.
Right.
But with Lord Krishna, the way we see in he is pleased is okay, his devotees are satisfied. Or we see whatever Srila Prabhupada had mentioned, I am able to do that. Oh yeah, Krishna is to be satisfied. But so I actually don't get immediate feedback from the Lord. I have to look for symptoms, and connect it to the understanding of information that Krishna has given us. And see, yeah, maybe Lord is satisfied. Or I'm engaged in service, it means Lord is merciful to me. More I'm able to engage. And this is again, we are going on with this understanding and applying the understanding, and that's how we feel Lord is satisfied. Of course, there is some spiritual, we feel some sense of progress being made and happiness that we feel inside, which is difficult to express. So that is one thing that we feel, and some symptoms of sort of some ecstasy sometimes once in a while.
Okay, so I'm hearing these themes. That one reason it's difficult is that I'm accustomed to pleasing myself. That's one reason it's difficult. Another reason, and I don't see him, I'm not aware of him. And I also am hearing that, when I'm trying to please myself, or if I'm trying to please some other jiva in this world, it's usually fairly quick and easy to see whether or not I've been successful. It may be very difficult to please other jivas consistently, but I can certainly ascertain it, usually. No, not always. Sometimes people appear to be pleased when they're actually displeased, and the opposite. But yeah, just like some devotees here asked me, at New Year's, they said, "Can I get you a present?" And so I had to think, well, what do I need? And then I thought, oh, well, there's this thing that I would like. And I actually gave them a link to it. And then they said, what color would you like? And I was able to tell them. And so they got it for me. And then it's a little humidifier. It's about this big. and they got it for me. And then I even took a video of using it. It has a light, which I don't really use, but it has a light so you can see the steam coming out. And so I sent that to them. And then, yeah, it's an immediate feedback loop. What would you like? I would like this. They get it for you. You take a picture of yourself using it, and whereas with Krishna, that's not always the case. That I'm doing something to please Krishna, and I don't know, was he pleased or not pleased? How do I know that? And if you think about how,
Hare Krishna.
for example, if you're going to train animals, one of the things that you do, or young children, is you give them some immediate feedback. as to whether they've pleased you or not. And the more, this is one thing we learn in education, the more immediate and clear the feedback, the more frequent the feedback, the more immediate and clear the feedback, the easier that we learn. And our feedback loop for Krishna's pleasure may not be so developed. Okay, Radhika says, our minds are clouded by our own desires. We don't see things from the Lord's perspective.
Hare
Okay,
Krishna.
so, yes, other thoughts. Yes, Ratnam Prabhu.
Mataji, once I asked Mohanda Datta Prabhu, the head pujari of ISKCON Vrindavan, how do we know after any seva that God is pleased? And he told me, if you are satisfied after any seva, then God is actually pleased, he said. Example, he said, if you do a deity worship, and after the seva, how do you feel? You feel very comfortable, you're satisfied. Then he said, Lord is pleased. That's what he gave the answer, Mataji.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I give that example always from Bhagavad Gita 9:2. When people ask me, how do you know that Krishna is pleased? Or how do you please Krishna? If they're asking me, how do you please Krishna? Then I usually respond with Bhagavad Gita 12:13-20, which is very related to what we're studying today, that to be free from enmity and duality and be merciful to all living entities is there. That's how to please Krishna. And how do we know Krishna is pleased? I answer that in two areas, one kind of more objective and one more subjective. That the more objective is what we're doing in line with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Because somebody might say, well, I'm pleased by smoking marijuana. It makes me feel pleased, therefore God is pleased. So, it's got to be in line with Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. You can't just make something up, or, I'm pleased blowing up buildings in the name of God, and that makes me feel happy. So, people do that kind of thing. So first of all, it's got to be within the purview of Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. That's the objective, but that's still too broad because Shastra is hugely broad. The examples of sadhus are a little narrower, but it's still broad, and the instructions of Guru can also be very broad. And then the other is subjective, and I always go to Bhagavad Gita 9:2. Raja Vijja Raja Guyam Pavitram Idamuttamam Prachaksha Vagamam Dharmam Susukam Kartavayam. Raja Vijja. The activity should fill you with knowledge, should fill you with realization. Oh, I understand that. Rajaguyam, you should get to the essence of things. You should really understand the essence of things. Pavitram, you should feel purified. You should have a sense of being purified. Pavitram idamutram. Pratyaksha, you should directly experience. It's not that someone else has to certify for you. You have pleased Krishna. It's something you should directly experience. Agamam dharmyam. Dharmyam means what is authentic, that you're feeling it on the level of soul, not just on the level of mind or senses. Susukam, it should fill you with happiness. If you just go for what makes me satisfied, you may mess up. So, the objective things have to be there. And the subjective experience should also be there. And if both the objective and the subjective is not there, but it's what we call a catch-22 situation, that in order to get free of illusion, I need to satisfy the Lord, but because I'm in so much illusion, it's difficult to access the Lord and difficult to know how to please him and when I have pleased him. But the only way to get out of illusion is to make an effort to please him. So it's nice that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Srila Prabhupada say that just wanting to please the Lord is good enough. All right. Now, Prahlad talks a lot here about not being into Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, because that's the main thing that his teachers are hammering over and over again. But at the same time, generally speaking, the devotees work in the world. Generally, we're not denying the world. Although Prahlad Maharaj told his father, go to the Vana, become a renunciate. Prahlad Maharaj himself doesn't do that, not at least at the beginning, not for the majority of his life. And Krishna is not advising Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita that most of the instructions are go work in the world. So we may say, well, I know that I'm trying to please the Lord when I'm chanting my japa, when I'm worshiping the deity. How do I work in the world to please the Lord? So anyone, any thoughts on this? How do I do my work in the world? How do I do my work with my family, my job, my personal bodily care, etc.? Anyone who want to raise their hand or put in the chat as you like. Because the world is Krishna's. Oh, okay, but how do I do that? Work is an offering for Krishna's pleasure. Good. Can you be a little bit more specific? Not hurting anyone. Yes, one has to be merciful to all living entities. Our work should be beneficial for others. Our speech, our work should actually be benefiting them. Ideally, doing some job that can have some relation to Krishna. Ooh, I'm going to catch you on this one. Everything's related to Krishna. Everything's related to Krishna. Everything's related to Krishna. See every living entity as part of the Lord. Well, that's huge. If I'm doing some work in the world and I see every living entity as part of Krishna, then how am I going to treat everything? How is that going to manifest? Showing compassion to others. Okay. Deal with people without enmity and duality. Excellent. Not only people. We work according to our natures. When we perform that work, we need to learn the art of connecting that work to Krishna and as an offering for his pleasure. I'm working because I need to, but whatever comes is for your pleasure and satisfaction. Nardarishi says, invite Krishna to manifest through our behavior in our dealings with things and people. Oh, I really, really like that. I don't do that all the time, but I do that a lot. And many times, like, again, I don't do it all the time. But, generally before I'm going to teach a class, I say, Prabhupada Krishna manifests through me. But that's true with anything that we do. By working on our consciousness such, we do things to only please Krishna and not necessarily our boss, colleagues, spouse, parents, children, temple president. This frees us from disappointment when people are ungrateful or misunderstand us. Prasad Modani, you have hit the nail right on the head. And it's so a little unclear, how would we do that? World is Krishna's, my friends are Krishna's and dear to him. So if I act in ways that will be helping them to please him, Krishna will be pleased. If I listen to those who are very dear to him due to their commitment, then Krishna will be pleased. Just by loving Krishna, even if we cannot manifest this yet, by being affectionate towards him, having some affection to all living entities. Make the family Krishna conscious. I don't know how to make anybody Krishna conscious, Radhika. I haven't figured that out. I'm going to make you be Krishna conscious. Good luck with that one. I think I know what you mean, but please watch your language. Because this can imply that we're the doer, and especially with other living entities, please don't try to be this mentality, I'm going to be the doer. Always think of Krishna all the time. All right. Okay. So I like to give a very simple example of this because it's something I think we all have experience with. So let's say that I want to impress person A for whatever reason. I want person A to like me. I want person A to be impressed with me. And person A is in the room while I'm dealing with person B. So I'm being very nice to person B and dealing with them very nicely. Not so much to please person B directly, but to please person A. Just like, you're in a store and you're dealing nicely, your boss is standing nearby and you're dealing with your customers, not exactly to please your customers, who may or may not be pleased, even with your best effort, but to please your boss who's watching how you deal with your customers. So we all have this experience. Yes, everybody has this experience. You're dealing with B, but you're actually trying to please A. So we can do this with everything. All objects, Krishna is pervading all objects and they are within him. So even an object, even this pen is within Krishna's body and Krishna is pervading the pen. So it's not just people. All humans, all plants, all animals, all insects and reptiles and objects are within Krishna and Krishna is within them. And therefore I can deal with them in a way that Krishna is pleased. Now, obviously, I'm not going to try to please my pen directly because it has no feelings, but am I dealing with my pen? Krishna is always there. Is he pleased with how I'm dealing with him? Am I remembering that he's there? Am I feeling some love for him? Which some of you mentioned, which I thought was really, really nice. And getting this, folks, is important because, you know, even if you're a Bhajananandi, which is not what Prabhupada wanted, but even if you're a Bhajananandi sitting on the bank of Radhakund chanting Hare Krishna, you know, you're still going to have to bathe. You know, you're still going to have to do things. You're still going to have to interact with somebody. How to please Krishna in the world. Okay. So how can we realize the Lord's position? If we go to 20 to 24, so this is a very long, and pull up. Well, we have 20 to 23 and then 24. It's too long for me to pull up. So if you can just please look in your own book or on your own computer on 23 to 24, where Prahlad Maharaj is giving the Lord's position. So how can we realize this? How can we take what Prahlad Maharaj is saying in 20 to 24 and actually realize this, have it be real for us? Advaita Krishna Prabhu.
The essential ingredient is actually compassion. If we actually have true compassion, it touches our heart. And that way we can actually.
Okay. Anybody else? Only those who are surrendered to the Lord can realize. Okay. See, again, you're answering the question with the question. How can I realize that he's actually the essence? I can understand it. I'm asking you, how can you understand it? You're saying, I can understand it. How? I would like everyone to answer this, either by raising their hand or in the chat, either one or the other. Prema Manjari?
It is actually explained in the 11th canto that by deity worship, one comes to the realization that the Lord is present as the super soul in the heart of everyone. So this is the result of worshiping the deities.
Okay, we have Sitarani saying to have a nice kirtan and a nice festival, you'll realize that the Lord is everywhere and in everything. In the association of devotees, well, I think it depends what devotees and what they're doing, what they're talking about, in my experience. Jivadoya Namaruchi Vaishnava Seva and Advaita Krishna Prabhu, okay? By doing those things, I will realize. You could, yeah, you got to make sure you're not sectarian. You got to make sure those things are not sectarian. You got to make sure you're doing those things above the Kanista platform, isn't it? Because I could see somebody saying, oh, I'm going to be merciful to the jivas in my group, right? And the name is my sectarian. So it has to be broad if we want to see Krishna broad. Ajay Prabhu.
Mataji, one way I see actually, I work for the California Department of Water Resources, which is part of Natural Resource Agency. In the government departments, they see the natural resources. So every natural resource, you have, lands, forests, rivers, ecosystem. All of these resources are called provided by nature, by God.
Yes.
They cannot be created. We cannot create a single drop of water. It's provided by God. That's why when we pay our water bill, we don't pay the cost or the intrinsic for the value of water. We only pay for the cost of treatment and pumping cost. The same thing when we buy gold, we don't pay for the actual intrinsic value of gold because it's provided by God. So every single thing that we see, the tree, the paper, plastics, oil, whatever it is actually provided by God. It's all natural provided. And we don't pay a penny for any of those products we get because it's given by our Father. We only pay for labor that others have put in molding that item that comes to our table. So that way we can see God. That's how I preach actually, in normal sense, with outsiders. Directly somehow bring God in. So that's one way of.
I like that. I like that very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually,
Any-
this
any-
came to me in a realization. I was in a water law class, and the lawyer said that water is provided by, it's actually said in law, is by God, by nature.
Mm. Yes. Yes. And Sitarani is saying to go to chapters 7, 9, 10. By the way, it's also in chapter 15. 7, 9, 10, and 15. That Krishna shows us how to see him in the world. Of course, along with the devotee Kamalasita, we produced a book called Krishna Meditations on how to realize these verses like 20 to 24. Yeah, the question is how to understand that the Lord is the essence of everything. How do we understand that the Lord is? How do we realize that? How do we experience that? How are we going to, how is that going to be a reality for us? Not just something that's written in a book that we read for our Bhakti Vedanta degree. Yeah, how is it going to be something tangible, pratyaksha? How are we going to experience this? I was very much meditating on this morning during my japa time, that I had read something from the Kirtanira Chuta Gopi, and she was saying, sometimes you just want to hug and then you pick up your japa beads and you're satisfied. And I was just really meditating during japa that Krishna is there as his name. He's there in the air. He's there in the sun, and that he's everywhere around me, and that by chanting, I'm connecting with that. Being an instrument in his hands, I like that. Studi Priyarada, that if I act as an instrument, then I'm very aware of the Lord's presence. At least I'm aware of the Lord's presence within me and within my heart. I would also say that if anyone hasn't yet answered this question, please answer this question. At least in the chat. I want everyone to answer it, either by raising your hands or in the chat. Yes, so Mahalakshmi is basically repeating what Ajay Prabhu said. Very nice. By the Lord's mercy, he'll remove the curtain. Well, I'm just going to sit around waiting for his mercy. I'm not sure if that's a really good strategy, although that's true that he will. Definitely the worship of the deities. They reciprocate that one can understand all their pervading power. Nice. Mood of humility. Okay, we do everything we wait for Krishna's mercy. Yes, okay, that we can feel Krishna everywhere in the kirtan. To associating with the devotees, we can feel Krishna's presence everywhere. Excellent. Okay, so we're having a repeat here of something that was discussed in another class that I discussed, but I never asked any of you to discuss. So I'm going to put this quote in the chat. So again, I talked about this. I think I talked about it last class. That people who make no distinction between mine and yours. So this is the purport to text 25. Are actually fit to accept Bhagavat Dharma, and this relates to what we studied yesterday, where Prahlad Maharaj was condemning people who think in terms of mine and yours. How do we relate this to this concept of only taking our own quota? Anyone have any thoughts? Anyone want to raise their hand? Have any thoughts about? Ishopanishad says, just have your quota, don't infringe on anyone else's. To do that, you've got to distinguish what's mine and what's yours. Yes, I shared it. It's in the chat. And yet we're being told here, don't distinguish between what's mine and what's yours. So, somebody want to try to explain this?
Did you go to repeat that, please? I didn't quite get
It's
it.
in the chat.
Mataji can't see it in the chat. That's why I can't see it either.
Nor can I.
Oh, I see what happened. Ha, 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 ha. Somebody had written me a direct message, and so when I wrote in the chat, it just went to them. All right, sorry about that. All right, there we go. Once somebody writes you a direct message, then when you write something, it automatically goes back to them unless you switch it, and I didn't notice. Sorry about that. So these things seem to be opposite, not have any sense of what's mine and what's yours, and knowing what's my quota and what's not my quota.
Or is sharing everything that you have with others. If you can arrive at that, that would give us.
Hopefully not everything absolutely, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, then we will see there's nothing is mine and all yours. It's belong to the Lord, and I'm sharing it with everybody. So that's a very difficult feeling, very difficult to do, something very difficult. But I see that devotees who have offered their services to ISKCON, who are full-time devotees, are actually doing that. They're offering everything to the Lord, all their services, without expecting anything in return. And it's not, oh, this is what I have done. This is my code, my area. Don't come in.
I'm thinking this even when it comes to like one's wife, where the Bhagavatam says that your wife should be offered for receiving guests and serving others, that, and Prabhupada said, the women are not just meant to work at home, but they're also meant for working in devotion. And that, even if you think, well, this is my wife, my husband, my children, but you should actually say, no, you go and do some service. Śrīmad Govinda, your thoughts?
I was thinking of the example of service, like I'm in the garland team of Radha Madhava service. So it's like, yeah, it's my service, but then maybe another devotee makes a better garland than I could. And then I see that. And so there's not you and mine, it's for the service of Krishna. At the same time, I may have a quota of this is your service. Like I get to make the head garland and for Madhava's flute. So the quota in terms of service is like, it's a kind of difference between quantitative and qualitative. Qualitatively, I see whoever does great service for Radha Madhava, it's great. It doesn't matter if I'm doing it or someone else is doing it. But on the other hand, the boundaries of what is my part of the service. So I was just thinking maybe this analogy to, at least on one perspective of this principle.
I like that you're talking in terms of service, that, even in the spiritual world, different devotees have different services. It's one of the 11 items of identity that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives. So devotees have a sense that, oh, this is, my responsibility. I have to bring something for Mother Yasoda. I have to bring the spices for the morning cooking to Mother Rohini, and I have to, bring Vrinda Devi the flowers I collected. Whatever it is, I have a certain service that I have to do. Yes. So I like that. I'm also thinking just in terms of, like I have this room is, at least at this particular point in time, is my quota, and someone else's room is not my quota. So I don't just go barging into people's rooms and say, well, everything's Krishna's, so I can just stay here. Anyone else? Prasant Modini, very nice if you want to look in the chat. Very nice realization. It's all Krishna's. So, but based on our previous lives, based on our skill, based on Krishna's desire, he's giving us some things to look after. Yes, anybody else? Any thoughts?
We are just managers, managing Krishna's resources that is in our control. So we have to use those resources wisely. Minimum for our senses, maximum for Krishna and other entities.
Very nice. Mahalakshmi.
Yes, like the different parts of my body, all of the parts are serving me, the stomach, Prabhupada says. So in that way, and I am not enemy with my right hand or left hand, but we are all the parts are cooperating. So similar to what Radha Govinda was saying with the garland. So seeing everyone as part of the whole.
But there might be some things that belong to certain parts of your body and not to others. Like my socks belong to my feet. So, and they're my feet's quota, right? My watch is my wrist quota.
Yes, but if your feet have the socks, then the whole is satisfied. Similarly, if every person has their quota, Krishna is satisfied because everyone is taken care properly, no, and able to facilitate the service.
Yes, very nice. Thank you. But I like that, my feet have the socks as their quota. But actually everything belongs to the body. Okay. So Prahlad Maharaj is talking about, don't get into this dharma, artha, kama, moksha, bhakti's enough. So what does a devotee desire? Okay, I like what Prema Manjari wrote here. What does a devotee desire? Any thoughts? Devotees have desires, or we're not alive. If you're alive, you have desires. What does a devotee desire? I really like what Prema Manjari wrote about the previous question. In harmony with Krishna's desires. Okay, nice. The pleasure of the Lord. You can raise your hand or chat as you like. Your desires to see Krishna's teeth with you reveals by laughing and smiling. Narada Rishi is wonderful. Yes, actually Prabhupada says that the residents of Vrindavan, they just want to see Krishna smile, and Narada Rishi wants to see one of Krishna's smiles where he's showing his teeth. Okay, to please the Lord eternally, Krishna's happiness, even at personal risk and discomfort. Devotee does not desire anything. Well, a devotee has to desire something, because if we don't desire anything, we're not alive. The service of Guru and Krishna, only to serve the Lord's lotus feet, to see others becoming devotees, to see the spreading of Krishna consciousness. Very nice. Good prasadam. I definitely desire good prasadam. I'm not going to deny that. If you want to make Krishna laugh, then make plans. Maybe we should make plans to see Krishna ruin it. Oh, that was good. Oh, that was good. Somehow Krishna's smiling. There's this really funny pastime in the Chaitanya Charitamrita where the devotees go to Vrindavan. Just think of Jagannatha Pandit. He comes back from Vrindavan with these pilu fruits, and he's giving them out to the residents of Jagannath Puri. And some of the residents of Jagannath Puri, you desire to attend festivals, okay? Some of the residents of Jagannath Puri know that they're supposed to spit out the seeds, and some of the residents are not so familiar, and so they're chewing the seeds, and the seeds have like a spiciness to them. And so when the devotees who weren't familiar are chewing the seeds, somehow nobody told them, hey, this is how you eat the fruit. Lord Chaitanya starts laughing. And there was a while that pastime bothered me. It's like, why is he laughing that they're getting it? Oh, it's kind of spicy. But I thought the devotees are enjoying seeing that the Lord is laughing, even if the Lord is laughing at their foolishness. A desire to attend festivals. Yeah, that's a transcendent desire. Desire to visit holy places. Simply want to serve him. We have Maharaj Prithu, who has a very strange desire. He wants millions of ears. I think they will look kind of funny, Millions of ears, millions of tongues. So he can hear all the katha at once, right? Like, we can't attend. There's right now so many classes going on. Like I'm teaching this class. I can't go to the temple class. That's happening at the same time. In fact, I can't teach my scheduled classes at the temple. I had to tell the class scheduler I have to skip 2 weeks of my classes. So to be able to hear, all the classes. In which way am I pleasing the most? What is my function? I like that. On a rasa level, to see Krishna lose to Radharani. You want to see Krishna lose to Radharani? So we have someone who wants to see Krishna's teeth, and someone else who wants to see Radharani beat Krishna. Devotees are wonderful. I love teaching devotees. Yeah, I've been focusing more and more and more in my own desire that I desire to actually feel my love for Krishna, that I really desire to love Krishna. I desire to be pervaded by love for Krishna. Okay.
What does it mean to see Krishna lose to Radharani?
Well, ask her.
I'm asking.
Ask
Oh,
her.
well,
Okay.
maybe in an
Remember-
argument, maybe in a leela. So there's always that spiritual competition and rivalry in the spiritual world. And I mean, at least I tend to see myself first in the team of Radharani. And so if there is anything going on, he's difficult to be trusted. So it's good to see that Radharani wins in that way. That's on a rasa level, not on the Siddhanta.
Yeah, sometimes they play games, Like every day at noon they play games, and there's Radharani's team who's, come on, Radha, beat Krishna, get his flute. There's the gopis that they each have their Krishna always loses to Radharani. Nilamani, I don't know about that. I don't know if he always loses to Radharani. Sometimes Krishna wins. Not to commit any offense, so there'll be no stumbling blocks. Okay, right out of Ishopanishad. Ramananda Krishna, you don't say much in this class. I don't see your name popping up very much. So Ramananda Krishna Prabhu, yes, not to commit any offense, so there'll be no hindrance to my progress. All right. In 28, Prahlad Maharaj actually tells the students, hey, I heard this from Narada. And he volunteers the information. They don't even ask him. They don't even ask him. So Shanda and Amarka asked Prahlad, who taught you this? Hiranyakashipu asked Prahlad. Actually, Shanda and Amarka also asked very nicely. They said, oh, dear Prahlad, you're so sweet, you're so tender, you're so kind. Just tell us who taught you this. And then they also said, who taught you this? They had both. And Hiranyakashipu's like, who taught you this? And the boys didn't ask that. They didn't say, where did you learn this? They didn't challenge Prahlad. And in 28, he tells them, he said, I learned this from Narada. Why? Why is Prahlad doing this? We already talked about why he didn't say anything to Sanda and Amarka and Hiranyakashipu, because he figured that their whole reason for asking was so that they could punish Narada. He was trying to protect Narada. So he just wouldn't answer it at all. He'd say, I'm just being inspired by the Lord, like iron to a magnet, and you wouldn't understand anyway, you stupid materialistic fool who's going to hell, because you couldn't figure this out anyway, either on your own or from learning from somebody else. So that was his answers. And here he's volunteering the information. I mean, I would be a little scared that if I volunteer the information to the boys, maybe one of them is going to report it to the teachers or something. Why is he doing it? Any thoughts?
One hand, if I was to talk to somebody elderly, I would try to show that this information is authentic by bringing in that I have received this from Narada. But these are boys, 5-year-old boys. They don't care. They don't know about Narada. And but at least for this information creates authenticity for us.
Oh, okay.
Because-
Now, of course, we already knew the story because we were told the story earlier. So we were actually told, those of us reading the Bhagavatam, we already knew this is kind of a recap for us. But yeah, Prahlad Maharaj may be aware that his guru Narada knows all this stuff that's going on, is going to repeat it to Maharaj Yudhisthira in the Bhagavatam.
And then another thing is he is now fearless. He doesn't care anymore. He had head on with others.
That way, that Prahlad Maharaj at this point in the Leela, he really he's not considering these things as much. I mean, he wants to protect Narada, but he's just not considering these things anymore. He just like, I'm protected, Narada's protected. Okay, so we have some nice things in the chat. They're not inimical. They're receptive. These children cannot directly harm Narada. They deserve the mercy of a devotee. Okay, they're not malicious. To show that it's authoritative, it's essential that he has to show it. I see, the children are tender, open to suggestion, which was already mentioned in the Bhagavatam. So a cost-benefit analysis, that's interesting. He must have figured out there's a greater benefit of telling them versus potential harm. Okay, cool. They could offend Narada. They could, yeah. He's spiritually proud of his master, yes. Plus, he needs to quote the source to establish veracity, authenticity. Yes, we have to do that. And also, I see that Prahlad has taken the initiative to preach to his friends. He did not take the initiative with his teachers or his father. His teachers and his father, they were the initiators. They're asking him, what's the best thing you learned? And Prahlad's just answering the question. With the boys, he's taking the first step as to establish credibility. He didn't trust their intelligence, so he kept it simple. Yeah, okay. I don't know. It doesn't sound very simple to me. Prahlad's preaching very complex philosophy. We shouldn't preach to people who are envious. I see that also it's just very important. It's a very important point to always establish our sources. And Prahlad Maharaj is doing this for our benefit as an example to the boys. And yes, he's also become fearless. Also, he's initiated the conversation. I see that. That also makes a difference. Okay. So then the boys asked some questions in 29 and 30 that, and I'd like you to think about Arjuna's question to Krishna in the beginning of chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita. So I'd like you to compare the questions of the boys in 29 to 30 to Arjuna's question in the beginning of chapter 4 Bhagavad Gita. Well, Stuti Priyaradha, Prahlad wasn't asked where he got the knowledge before he gave that information. After he gave the information of where he got the knowledge, then he was asked by the boys, how is this possible? So you have it in reverse order. Anybody's thoughts? Anybody want to raise their hand? Looking at these questions.
I didn't understand your question.
You didn't understand my question. Okay, I will put it in the chat, and this time I'm going to make sure that I actually send it to everybody.
He says, Vivaswan is senior to you by birth. How am I to understand
Yes.
that he told this to you?
Yes.
You told it to him.
Yes, and the boys are asking?
Same thing. He says, you have been with us in the palace. How do you where did you meet now?
Same mood and same doubt. How could you have met this person? I mean, Arjuna's doubting, how could you have met him to teach him? And the boys are asking, how could you have met him to learn from him? And one is in terms of time, and one is in terms of geography. Anything we can learn from these kind of questions? Love to hear from someone who hasn't said anything so far. Dependence on our sense perception can be limited, okay? In both these cases, the questioner is operating on the material plane. You need to physically meet Narada. You need to be born at that time, while the teaching happens in terms of a spiritual plane. Of course, but the teaching did happen on a material plane. Krishna was existing there and did meet the sun god, and Prahlad did actually meet Narada. I like this, Asit Prabhu. Raise doubts, don't accept just things easily. Raise your doubts. How to query when we have doubts. Excellent, Narada Rishi. It's good to clear one's doubts directly. Ekanta, excellent. Excellent. Is this encouraging us to ask these kind of questions? It's important to dispel our doubts regarding the source of knowledge. Thank you, Prema Manjari. We need to do that. Just because someone's sitting on the Vyasa-san, and just because they're wearing saffron, and just because they have 5,000 disciples, doesn't mean that you can't ask a question about where does this come from. Even if you're talking to God, you can ask him that question. Yes, a submissive mood. Yes, otherwise they probably won't want to tell you. But even if God's talking to you, you can say, where did this come from? Yes, this question. Or how is this possible? Where did this come from, or how is this possible? I don't see how it's possible. Can you explain to me how it's possible? That this is their example. that we should do like that. It's an important question. I was just thinking of Usha with Chitraketu. With Chitraleka, it was kind of a different thing. When Usha said that she had this dream of Aniruddha, and Chitraleka said, well, you've oh no, she woke up in the middle of the night to say, my dear beloved, and Chitraleka said, you've never even met a young man. You've always been protected. Who are you talking to? Okay, so we have about 6. If Arjuna hadn't asked this to Krishna, we would not have known, and people would have doubted. So we can ask for the sake of others knowing. Yes, also, even if we don't have our doubts. Okay, we have about 5 or 6 minutes. If anyone has any general questions or discussions on anything, yes, Ajay Prabhu.
Mataji, we hear about Mahatpada Rajobhishekam. We should smear the dust of advanced devotees on the body. What does this mean? How do we get to the dust?
But you did have, I'm trying to remember where I read it. Now, after telling you, I should always quote the sources, but I'm trying to remember if it's in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Bhagavatam, or Chaitanya Mangala, about devotees following Lord Chaitanya and scooping up the dust so that there were holes in the ground behind him, and then they're pouring it over themselves. I mean, I've definitely taken some, surreptitiously taken dust from devotee shoes and put it on my head, but rolling in it is a little hard. I've never gotten enough of it to roll in it or to take a bath in it. Sometimes we go, like in Vrindavan, we may roll in the dust of Giriraj, who's the best of devotees. That we can do. That I've certainly done that. But yeah, to have enough dust to put all over your body. So we can do that literally. We can definitely do it literally, although you often have to be a little surreptitious about it because devotees often aren't really into that. Like that Bengali who was drinking the foot water, Lord Chaitanya's foot water at the bathing of the Gundicha temple, and Lord Chaitanya got really angry and threw him out and said to Swarup Damodar, you've got to control your Bengali devotees. Your Bengali devotees are out of line here. But I see it also means, it can also be taken figuratively as a sign of humility, because the dust, like in my little room here, I have an outside mat and an inside mat, and I don't want people bringing their foot dust into my house. Thank you very much. I want them to leave their shoes outside and wipe their feet on the foot mat and not make my house dirty. So, the dust, oh, your house is really dirty. Yeah, well, it's covered with the devotees' dust, So generally dust is something unwanted. And so the idea is that it's humble, that even the devotees' dust that we're taking. Yes, Sri Radha Govinda.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding the figurative principle. You mentioned earlier, not everybody in the Hare Krishna movement like you. Some people love you, some people may not like you.
Definitely people don't like it.
I think it's for many of us. So I was wondering how to apply this principle of humility based on your personal experience, how to imbibe, because it's easier for me to go and take somebody's dust and put it on my head. But then when the other day somebody came and criticized a class that I gave and they were giving me some comments, and I was thinking, it irks. It's so hard to stay in the state of humility, knowing everything, even studying Bhakti Vedanta. It just seems so difficult. And then there was this whole, it became a controversy, something I said at the end of the class, and it became a whole social media thing, everybody discussing, and I was just like, it's not possible. It's not possible to have it. Yeah.
I wish I could say that I have no idea what you're talking about, but yes, been there, seen that, done that.
Right. So how did you apply this gradually, or suddenly? How can I imbibe this mood of humility in this kind of environment where I don't trust that these people want me to succeed or improve? It's just coming from a place
probably some of them don't. I had someone years ago write me an email that I can't wait to read your obituary on Dandavats. So, it's not, I'm a female who preaches. Beginning, middle, end of story. Just that. I mean, I have people who hate me for that. It doesn't matter what I'm trying to, I don't even have to say something that's controversial. I just have to open my mouth and say Hare Krishna. There are people who hate me. It's not easy, but what we can do is we can understand that our tendency to become defensive or offensive, to go on the defense or go on the offense when someone attacks us. And there will be people who attack us. And if you say, well, I'm just going to stay home and, make Gewicks or something, and that way nobody will attack me, then somebody will attack you because all you do is stay home and make Gewicks. It's just the way the world is. For sure. Like there's that story of the father and his son with the donkey. Whatever they did, somebody criticized. So our initial response is either to go on the defensive or the offensive or both, because of the biological imperative of our being herd animals. We are social animals. And if we are disliked by somebody in our group, especially if someone has any higher status than us or any power over us, our natural biological instinct is the fight or flight or freeze, or that's a natural biological instinct, because on the biological platform, we actually feel threatened. We feel that our resources may be threatened, that if I said something in a class that someone says is bogus, and then that gets all around, and then the GBC hear that I said something bogus, then they'll say I can't live in Mayapur anymore, and I can't come get any prasadam, and then nobody will want me, and I'll want to sign up for the VIHE classes, and they'll say, sorry, you can't sign up for the classes because you've been blacklisted. And, we have a legitimate concern that we may lose access to material resources, and in our devotional society that we may lose access to spiritual resources. So if we can step back and see and feel, oh, that's why I'm having this response. It's a wired in biological instinct that, whether Lord Brahma or Krishna did it, I don't know, but it's wired into us to keep us safe, and that Mari Krishna Rake Krishna Mari Ke. What I have, nobody can hurt me unless Krishna wants them to, and if Krishna wants them to, then there's nothing I can do to protect myself. And if Krishna doesn't want, then it's not going to have any effect. And so I don't need to see this person as my enemy. They're only acting as my enemy because Krishna is allowing it. And the things they're doing in enmity to me may or may not have any effect, and may do nothing. We've all experienced that people have criticized us and said lies about us or whatever, and it doesn't have any effect. It does nothing. And sometimes people say things and it does have an effect. That's up to Krishna. And to just see them as Krishna's part and parcels and just Krishna's agents, and therefore one can offer them respect. Is that easy in the immediate moment? No. But one can learn to very quickly step back and say, this is what, it's really just a biological thing. I compare it to, if you're foolish enough to go grocery shopping when you're fasting, and which I did one time, and I don't want to do that again. That wasn't wise. So then you naturally desire to eat the stuff in the store because you're fasting. But you can see that. You can see, oh, this is just a biological thing. I don't really want to eat these things. I mean, it was decades and decades ago. I was in a grocery store, and normally the baked goods don't hold any. There's nothing. I know they're made with eggs. They're not offered to Krishna. I have no attraction for them at all. But one time when I was fasting, I felt some, my body was going, I'm hungry. And I'm like, well, that's weird. Why did I have that response? And then, oh, it's biological. It's not actually me. It's just the body. Something like that. Okay, and it's already after time. how to draw the line between being politically correct and speaking the truth. Oh, that is a whole other discussion. And Prasant Modini, that's also a whole other discussion. And we are already over time. And I have actually some appointments today in town, so I have to get going. But if possibly, if you want to save those questions and if they're germane to a future class, we'll try to get to them. Thank you very much. Any mistakes I may hear, please excuse me. Anything good in this class is from Srila Prabhupada, Prahlad Maharaj, Narada Muni, Sukadeva Goswami, and certainly not from me. Hare Krishna.